Hey friends, welcome. We know just a few things about Moses going into today's story. First, he has evaded the death sentence that Pharaoh issued for baby boys born to Hebrew women. This occurred thanks to some clever actions by his mother and his adoption by the Pharaoh's daughter. He is presumably raised among the Egyptians because it is not until he has grown up that he witnesses the enslavement of the Hebrew people. His anger in seeing an Egyptian beating a Hebrew led him to kill the Egyptian. The Pharaoh learns of this, and Moses flees the region in fear. He rescues the daughters of a man named Jethro from some aggressive shepherds who were not letting them water their flocks. This impresses Jethro, who is also the priest of Midian, and he gives his daughter Zipporah to Moses to marry. Much time passes, and we find Moses shepherding a flock of Jethro's animals. This is somewhat ironic considering how such an occupation would have been regarded in the residence where he was raised. Moses takes the flock to Mount Horeb, which is also known as the mountain of God. The angel of the Lord appears to him in a flame of fire that emerges from a bush. The bush burns without burning up. Moses turns to look, and the Lord calls out to him, saying, "Moses, Moses, come no closer. Remove your sandals, for this is holy ground. I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob." Moses hides his face in fear. The Lord speaks of the suffering of the enslaved Hebrews in Egypt. He has heard their cries and has come down to deliver them to a good and spacious land. God says to Moses, "I am sending you to Pharaoh to bring my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt." Moses asks, "Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt?" God does not directly answer his question, instead saying, "I will be with you, and this shall be the sign for you that it is I who sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain." Then Moses dares to ask how to answer when he approaches the Israelites and they ask who has sent him. How should he reply when they ask the name of the God of their ancestors? Yahweh says, "I will be who I will be. Tell them, I am, has sent me to you. The Lord, the God of your ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, has sent me to you. This is my name forever, and this my title for all generations." Let's take a moment to get oriented as to the location of this story. If you look at a map of the region, where Egypt is to the west, Midian is to the east, on the eastern side of the Gulf of Aqaba, which stems north from the Red Sea. That puts it in modern-day Saudi Arabia. To get to Midian from Egypt, you cross the entire Sinai Peninsula. But in this story, Moses has led Jethro's flock into the wilderness, which it appears is on the other side of the Gulf of Aqaba on the Sinai Peninsula. One location for Mount Horeb is toward the south end of the peninsula, and another is farther north. Some questions might emerge from this passage. One that is easy to answer is this the end of their discussion? Does Moses resign himself to being God's messenger? You need only read on to Exodus 4 to see that was not the case. Moses pushes back, citing his lack of eloquence, and asks that the Lord send someone else. God reassures him by saying he can have his brother Aaron do the talking. We might question God's choice of Moses as well. While he came through that one time at the well, we also know he has killed a man, he fled Egypt in fear, and now he's living at his father-in-law's place working as a shepherd. He doesn't seem to know who the Lord is. And by the way, he's around 80 years old. Perhaps not a prime candidate to lead an effort to disrupt the economic system of a powerful ruler. The religion of Moses is also in question. He does not appear to be familiar with God, although the connection to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob seems to resonate with him. Also, he's been living in Midian with the high priest of that land. This might lead you to ask who Jethro's God was. To me, Jethro seems to be a priestly figure like Melchizedek. Both are mentioned in the Hebrew Bible as well-regarded religious leaders, even though they are not included among God's chosen people. Finally, we might ask what the Lord meant when telling Moses, "When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you shall serve God on this mountain." Mount Horeb, the mountain of God, is also sometimes referred to as Mount Sinai. That is the site where Moses later receives the 10 Commandments from God. I'd like to share some thoughts from biblical scholar Walter Brueggemann about this passage. Sadly, Walter recently passed away, but his writings on Scripture will be treasured for years. Regarding this appearance of God, he writes that the voice in the bush, taken by itself, might be evidence of all sorts of religious manifestation, and has been interpreted in many varied ways. We are told promptly, however, that this is not a generic religious presence. This is the nameable, identifiable voice of the God of Genesis, the one who has made faithful promises, who goes with, who guards fugitives like Jacob, who keeps outsiders like Joseph, and who births babies to barren mothers. Brueggemann also writes that God's call must have stunned Moses when he heard it, and must have stunned Israel each time it was reiterated. What had been all pious promise now becomes rigorous demand. Come. In one brief utterance, the grand intention of God has become a specific human responsibility, human obligation, and human vocation. It is Moses who will do what Yahweh said, and Moses who will run the risks that Yahweh seemed ready to take. The connection of God and Moses, of heaven and earth, of great power and dangerous strategy is all carried in the statement, "I will send you." After the massive intrusion of God, the Exodus has suddenly become a human enterprise. It is Moses, not God, who will meet with Pharaoh. It is Moses, not God, who will bring out my people. It is Moses who acts in God's place to save God's people. Again, this is the odd joining of God and human history. The joining is done, however, through the vulnerable, risk-taking body of Moses, on whom everything now depends. It is no wonder that the narrative that follows shows Moses voicing a series of serious doubts and resistances to the summons, for he has been summoned to do a remarkably dangerous deed. There is, moreover, substantive reason for such resistance, especially in the case of Moses. The call is a summons for him to return to the dangerous, conflictual arena of Egypt, where his own identity is at risk, and where he must frontally challenge the enormous imperial power of the status quo. Clearly, Moses' chances of success in Egypt are modest indeed, and his chances for survival are no better. Finally, regarding the name shared by the Lord, Brueggemann writes that the God with the enigmatic name is in fact the one already known in the Genesis narratives concerning the ancestors. Thus we come full circle to what Moses already knows. Moses' knowledge of God has advanced little, but the old memory contains everything Israel needs to know. Everything is already present there and now is freshly enacted in this encounter with Moses. The name Yahweh ostensibly derives from some form of the verb to be, so that God is the power for life, the power of being, the power of newness. Moses has killed a man, doesn't seem to know who God is, isn't a good public speaker, and is arguably past his prime physically. Plus, he doesn't seem flattered to be God's choice as the deliverer of the Israelites. In fact, he tries to evade the designation. Yet God sees promise in Moses. The Lord didn't require someone who was a better public speaker, who was younger, who had political connections, who was well-versed in theology. God knows who Moses is and will bridge any gaps he brings to the equation. The Lord convinces Moses to leave his presumably comfortable life for an uncertain future, which will involve dangers and other challenges he is only beginning to understand. God just needs Moses to be who he is. I was recently speaking to someone who was concerned about making a good first impression. I understood the sentiment, as I've been in similar situations before, wanting to appear at my best. But what I encouraged her to do in this situation was to just be herself. So often we pressure ourselves to be more or be better or execute every effort perfectly. And I think more often than we realize, people are just looking for us to be who we are. In the situation this young woman is facing, she might not respond to every question with the perfect answer. She might not wear the exact right outfit. She might not demonstrate her qualities in the best light. But eventually, who she is will emerge. If the relationship she is pursuing is a fit, then who she is and who she is becoming is what matters most. During my cybersecurity career, I reviewed countless resumes and conducted many job interviews. When reading resumes, I was mainly concerned with getting a feel for who the candidate was, rather than technical certifications or a great GPA. I paid as much attention to the hobbies and interests section of those resumes as I did to the other portions, because what the candidates did in their spare time helped me understand better who they were. My objective during those interviews was to continue learning who the candidate was. Often they were concerned with giving a polished response to questions, but for me, the conversation sparked by those questions was what helped me learn whether they were a fit for the job they were seeking. We often put pressure on ourselves to achieve, but sometimes what might be needed is for us to just show up. Moses didn't think he was the right choice to confront the powerful Pharaoh, upend the Egyptian system of slave labor, and lead the Israelites to a better home. But God had other plans. The Lord knew Moses was familiar with the house of the Pharaoh, that he was troubled by the injustice inflicted on the Hebrew people, and who knows how many other things not recorded in Exodus. Moses would not be the first unlikely character God used to accomplish God's purposes, nor would he be the last. Who do you know that just needs to be who they are? Perhaps the next time you see them agonizing over a perceived shortcoming, you can remind them of how much they mean to you even on their worst day. And if you're the one doing the agonizing, remind yourself that you are not alone. The Lord will be who the Lord will be. And if we can just be who the Lord made us to be, the will of the I Am will be done. May it be so. Amen.